These days, there's a lot of different types of gamers, and with that comes a lot of different reasons why certain consoles are purchased over others. When asked, many gamers are likely to cite key factors like power, functionality, social features, online infrastructure, and library selection. The library selection is an interesting one because it can be swayed very heavily by exclusives that any particular platform offers that obviously can't be found on other ones. This can be a deciding factor for a lot of potential console purchasers since exclusives tend to be more optimized for their platform and add up over the life of the console to create an overall picture of a vibrant ecosystem that makes the console more enticing for those who might be new to it. Also, nobody wants to miss out. If there's a party going on in another room and you're sitting by yourself, naturally you're going to want to join in on the festivities. The fear of missing out is a natural part of human nature, and the video game industry is not immune to that. This is probably why the idea of console-specific software works so well and will continue to for as long as there are competing consoles for them to exist on. On top of selling more consoles with their exclusivity, branding identity is often aided tremendously by the available exclusives as well. Generally, when you think of Nintendo, you think of Mario, Zelda, and Super Smash games. Same with Halo and Gears when you think of Xbox, or Uncharted, Ratchet & Clank when you think about PlayStation. These are all exclusives, and it's important for consoles to have them as a means of identifying themselves and setting themselves apart from their competitors. It would be pretty hard to argue in favor of your platform if the only games it could play were also on other systems. Sometimes the fact that one console's version of a multi-platform game might run a little smoother or at a higher resolution can be helpful, but at the end of the day, that generally doesn't move enough units on its own for companies like Sony and Microsoft to rely on. Obviously, third-party games like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty absolutely matter and will continue to play a massive role, but that's generally not what goes on the box for the console, does it? Consoles need their flagship characters from franchises that can represent the overall experience of the platform. This concept has, to one degree, always been relevant, but it really took off in the 90s with the so-called mascot era, where every console needed their representative, and it does to some degree still continue today. Although nowadays, it's not just limited to wide-eyed cartoony platforming characters, it can be anything from Nathan Drake to Master Chief, or something like Mario. So it seems like exclusives pretty much matter, right? But there is one unavoidable factor to consider here. Not all gamers care. In fact, a massive amount of gamers don't care. Some just want the console with the most power or some other factor like third-party support or social functions. Some people just want the console that their friends have and don't really care about anything else. So while it's true that Sony's PlayStation 4 is doing the best out of anyone this generation, and they also seem to have the best lineup of exclusives, that's not necessarily a causational relationship. Sony has definitely been knocking it out of the park with their exclusives lately, but it's not like the Xbox One doesn't have any. Forza, Gears, Halo are all franchises that have at least one major appearance on Microsoft's platform, and yet the console continues to fall well behind its competition. Another great example of exclusives not really having the sway that they appear to have today is just in the previous generation, where the Xbox 360 and the Nintendo Wii pretty much ran away with the market, at least for the first half of the generation. Sure, they did have exclusives, but they also had a lot of other things. The Wii had a new gimmick that hardcore gamers balked at, but younger gamers and families loved, and the Wii even attracted a fitness audience in for a while because of that. And the 360 ran away with the mainstream gamers with their online functionality, the likes of which nobody had seen, and by the end of that generation, the PS3 had the most quality exclusives, but just barely managed to catch up to comparable sales numbers with the 360. The exclusives weren't enough to give Sony a clear victory by any means, and it was clear that there were other factors that Sony needed to work on with the next machine, which they largely did with the PS4. So while the easy, quick answer to the question of whether or not exclusives matter is indeed a yes, it's still much more illuminating to ask how much do they matter and for which platforms and generations do they have the most impact. For the Wii U, exclusives mattered almost none, as the Wii U had lots of marketing and third-party issues that stood in the way of the platform being a success. Yet at the same time, exclusive software may be what saved the PS3 from relative failure, as that console had a pretty rough start because of similar issues. For the Xbox One, they aren't doing doing much good, yet the Switch is doing quite well, and the attach rate for that console is almost entirely based on the exclusives. The Xbox 360 did quite well, but as we discussed, the draw to that system wasn't really because of the exclusives, although they were there. So there really is no blanket answer to how much exclusives matter. It really just depends on the situation. When a console has nothing but exclusives, they can still fail, yet when a console has very few exclusives, but in theory get other things right, it can be very successful. From the eyes of Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, exclusive games may matter, but there's no logical reason to treat them as the be-all, end-all solution to every challenge that they might face. Between social functionality, third-party support, overall power, marketing strategy, and a plethora of other factors, there's just too many variables at play to bet everything on the exclusivity of certain titles. But at the same time, there are plenty of reasons to keep a healthy, vibrant first-party lineup to add to the other reasons for gamers to sink their money into the platform. For those reasons, console exclusives do matter and will continue to matter. It's just important to remember that console exclusives are not a replacement for other things that we expect consoles to do, but rather, console exclusives are better when looked at as a great way to add to a console and strengthen it when it already meets our expectations.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.